Mentoring for Organisational Success. I'm going to run through, I'm your chair for today, and I'm just going to run through some housekeeping. The first of all to point out to you is that today's session is being recorded and it will then be made available on the CIH website after the event. So we'll just run through some additional housekeeping and a bit of sort of scene setting before I hand you over to Ed, who you've come to hear from today. If I can ask that everyone mutes themselves during the presentation, obviously that will help with any sort of background noise and minimise that completely. So if everyone could just check that they're on mute, that would be really helpful. We do really want to make this session very, very interactive, and we can only do it with your help. So please do take the opportunity to ask questions. You can do this either by raising your virtual hand, which I think we're all so familiar with Teams now that you know what you're looking for in terms of the icon to be able to do that. But if you're not sure, then do let us know and we'll be able to help. Alternatively, you can post any of the questions that you might have into the chat and any observations that you might have as we're going along. So questions and observations and comments are very, very welcome. I'm pleased to be joined by a couple of my colleagues as well at CIH who are going to kindly help me to monitor the questions and comments that are coming through the chat, as well as having Ed here to do the main presentation for today. So if I can just take that opportunity to introduce our speaker today, who is Ed Johnson. And Ed is the CEO and the co-founder of Pushfar. And Ed will be able to introduce himself a bit more when he starts on his session sort of shortly. What I'd really like to do, because this session we've had an absolutely fantastic response and it's so great to see so many of you here today. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy diaries to join us. And what's really great to see is we have such a variety of members and non-members and people doing lots of different roles. So really to help us to sort of help to contextualise that, please don't be shy and use the chat box to sort of take the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Tell us perhaps what role that you do, what organisation you work for, and what's your objective of taking part in today's session. It would be a great way to use the chat to sort of start introducing ourselves. So who's going to be the first and not be shy and go ahead? So I look forward to seeing those coming through in the chat. So I've gone through the majority of the things that we need to know in terms of the housekeeping. Today's session, as I gave you the title, is about champion mentoring for organisational success. And when Ed goes through his presentation, I'm just going to talk very briefly about it now. But this really is about looking at the benefits of mentoring, not only to the mentor and the mentee, but to the organisation more widely. It's about how mentoring really has a positive impact on, for example, the EDI plans that you have within your organisation, how it can really support employee engagement within your organisation. What are the benefits of reverse mentoring? So a really wide spectrum that Ed is going to cover today, which is really great news. I'm not going to take up too much time now because it is Ed that you've come to hear, not me. But before we go on, I'm just going to sort of quickly touch upon CIH membership, and we can sort of talk about this a bit later on as part of the questions and answers and the sort of closing up. This session is open to all, as I've indicated before, but CIH has an excellent mentoring programme as part of our membership offer. And this was something that was developed last year, something we're extremely proud of, and working with Ed and his colleagues in terms of developing this for our members. So we'll be able to sort of talk a bit more about that. But in terms of CIH more widely, I'd really welcome the opportunity to sort of find out, you know, how engaged you may be with CIH at the moment or not, how much you might know. In terms of our membership benefits, we have a massive range of membership benefits with immense improvements made to that last year, including our mentoring programme and platform, and including our member exclusive and free to member events. All of those, plus our professional standards, are really strong elements of our membership offer. And one of the things that becomes very, very evident when you're looking at sort of the value of CIH membership and all of those aspects are also, if I can just focus on the professional standards. If you as a member have taken the opportunity to go through and do your self-assessment tool and do your self-assessment process and get your personal profile, one of the things that you've probably picked up in that is about all of those elements that are about continuous professional development, about how you support others, about how you take responsibility for your knowledge. And having a look through the professional standards again, you know, is a really good opportunity to look at those strong links between mentoring and between the professional standards and developing knowledge and supporting others and supporting this sector more widely. So without further ado, I am now going to hand you over to Ed. And Ed, thank you very much for your time today. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to share your screen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jill. Morning, everybody. Brilliant to have the opportunity to connect with you today. I am going through a presentation, but I hope it won't be death by PowerPoint. We'll get some interaction going. Great to see lots of people introducing themselves on the chat as well. It's also good to see some people introducing themselves on the chat and referencing mentoring and how you've been mentors or mentored as well. So that's great to see. Very brief intro from me. I'm Ed. I'm one of the co-founders of Pushfar. I actually come at mentoring from a personal perspective. I was looking for a mentor myself a few years ago. I was, I'll be honest, slightly lost in my own career and needed a bit of guidance and support to essentially develop my career and climb that career ladder. So I started looking at how you find a mentor and realized it wasn't that easy. Fast forward to now, we've now developed a platform to help hundreds of thousands of people doing that. So, so that's a very brief intro from me. In terms of what we're going to be covering off today, as Jill mentioned, it's all about organizational mentoring and how that can help. So we're going to set the basis for that. We're going to set the groundwork by just defining what mentoring is and also what the benefits are to the mentor, to the mentee, and to the organization. And there are lots of benefits. I'll try and highlight some of them here. But the lists that I will bring up are by no means exhaustive lists. So if you have any others that you can think of as we're going through those slides, do put them into the chat as well. The second thing I'm going to be doing is talking about the importance of mentoring in an organization. We're seeing more and more organizations embracing this idea of running mentoring programs for their employees. We're seeing lots more mentoring happening, even in the last 5 years since we started running Pushfar, that has grown a lot. So, and we'll highlight what those reasons for running mentoring programs are. I'm going to touch on some statistics as well around that. And then we're also going to then move into mentoring to support equality, diversity and inclusion. So we definitely see mentoring as one of the things that can bridge the gap between ED&I strategies and actually what's happening on the ground with employees to actually ensure that you are creating an equal, diverse and inclusive workforce. We'll then talk about mentoring for people development strategies. I know a lot of people on this call today are involved in learning and development or in HR. So we'll look at some of the strategies we're seeing organizations using mentoring for in terms of how they're developing people and upskilling workforces. We'll then talk about mentoring, and this is sort of throughout the whole presentation as well, but mentoring at all levels in an organization. There can sometimes be a tendency to either think that mentoring should be reserved for that sort of top 5% of the business, or in some cases, the bottom 5% of the business, but actually mentoring should happen at all levels for all employees and all participants, and everyone can benefit from mentoring. So we'll talk about and highlight that. And then we'll go through a bit about, and Jill mentioned this too, reverse mentoring. So what it is, how it works and why it works as well, and how you can use that in your organization if you're not yet doing so. So we'll start with one sentence definition. What is a mentor? Well, a mentor, simply put, is someone who shares knowledge, skills, and or experience to help another to develop and grow. And I think what's so important about mentoring is the fact that we've probably all been mentors and mentored throughout our careers, whether we've known it or not, whether we've directly called it mentoring. It's accessible to everyone. It's effective for everyone. Anyone who has knowledge, skills and/or experience, I think we all do, qualifies to be a mentor. And unlike things like coaching, mentoring doesn't really have qualifications. So yes, there are guidelines, there's training, but there are a limited number of sort of qualifications around mentoring. And in fact, there aren't really in the same extent qualifications with mentoring. So really is open to and accessible for everyone, and everyone can get involved. And this is how we all develop and learn in our careers. The other definition I'll put on the screen is reverse mentoring. Now, this really isn't that different from traditional mentoring, but if we want to give it a definition, it's when one individual who's typically considered less experienced, more junior or younger, is sharing knowledge, experience and skills in a specific area where they are more knowledgeable. And we'll talk a bit more about this later on in terms of the applications to that. But very briefly, that could be someone who's just joined a business, who's just out of school or college or university, or is on an apprenticeship program, mentoring the CEO of a business on their perspectives of the industry, their perspectives of the working world, what they're seeing in terms of trends and technology, and also, reverse mentoring around diversity and inclusion too. So we'll highlight that a bit later on. What I'd love for you to do as we're going through this as well is try to, some people get into the mindset that mentoring is about someone who's significantly older and significantly more senior, educating or teaching someone who's significantly younger or more junior. I want you to try and think less about it from an age perspective or a seniority perspective. And I want you to think about mentoring more as one individual sharing that knowledge with someone else. And we all develop knowledge at different points in our lives, different ages as well. So really think about it in that mindset rather than it being someone older to someone younger. So benefits now. There are benefits to the mentee, so the person being mentored. There are benefits to the mentor, and there are benefits to the organization. And we'll start with potentially the most obvious one, and that is the benefit to the mentee, the person being mentored. What are they getting out of it? And as I say, by no means an exhaustive list. So if you think of any, or there are any you'd like to add to this list, do drop those into the chat as well. The first one that we're seeing a lot is really mentoring for the individual being mentored is providing advice and guidance to reach objectives. So what is it that you want to achieve? What is it you want to get out of the mentoring relationship? Where is it you see your career in 6 or 12 months or 5 years even? And that mentor is providing you advice and guidance to really reach those objectives. The second thing is its guidance on professional development. So I mentioned earlier on, I wasn't sure how I climbed the career ladder in my own career. Actually, a mentor is in a fantastic position to be able to guide you on your professional development. Where is it you can improve on what you're doing in your career? What are the paths to your career development, and how should you be going about achieving those? So a mentor is often in a fantastic position to be able to help you with that. The third thing is, if you're looking at mentoring internally, it's improved organizational understanding. You may well have a mentor who's in a different department, who's in a different job function. If you're part of a national or an international company, you may have a mentor who's in a different office location. Actually, all of these things can help us to really improve our understanding of what's going on in the business or the organization that we're working in. And then if we're looking at mentoring programs such as the CIH mentoring program, it's improved industry understanding. What's happening in different businesses, in different organizations? How can I learn from what's going on in different organizations and take that away? So it's that improved understanding that we're getting from mentoring. It's a great opportunity to learn new skills. You'll learn new skills both directly from your mentor in your mentoring meetings, but also your mentor may well be able to guide you and advise you on the skills that you should be developing outside your mentoring meetings. We see it's really great at increasing your confidence. So actually, some people will go into a mentoring relationship actively looking to increase their confidence. Others will find that this just organically happens over time. Having that safe space, that guidance from someone who's really there to help and support you is a great way of increasing your confidence. And the last one that I want to put on the list is its accountability to reach your career goals. It's having that person who we're sharing the goals and objectives that we're working towards with, and feeling like they are, in some respects, holding us accountable to achieving those. And we know what accountability does when we look at goal setting. And it's to that point that I just very briefly want to share something about the reality of goal setting. And this is a research paper that was done by the Association for Talent Development. And so having an idea or a goal, you're 10% likely to complete that goal. Consciously then deciding that you will do it, you're 25% likely to complete that goal. Deciding when you will do it, you're at 40% now. So if you've given it a bit of a time frame, you're at 40% likely to do it, but that's still 60% likely that you're not going to achieve or complete that goal. Planning how you're going to do it, so putting together a bit of a plan, you're still 1 in 2 goals are not going to be completed. Committing to someone else that you will do it, and that takes it higher. So we've got 65% chance of completing that goal. But actually, having specific accountability appointment with someone you've committed to. So in the case of mentoring, a mentor, saying to your mentor, I'm going to do this at this date, at this time, this is how we're going to do it, and you're going to help me as my mentor, you're 95% likely to complete that goal. So you can really see actually that is just one of the benefits of mentoring, but one that I really wanted to highlight today, because actually having that person who can help you with your career goals is really vital to actually ensuring you're likely to complete them. As I mentioned, just as many benefits now to the mentor. And the first one that we see a lot of the time is that it's a great way of improving your interpersonal skills. Having that mentoring opportunity where your mentee is going to be potentially asking you quite challenging or tricky questions is really going to get you thinking about how you can convey the right response. And we know how valuable interpersonal skills are. Mentoring is a great way of brushing up on and improving those interpersonal skills through those mentoring conversations. The second thing, it's very much two-way learning. You're going to learn from your mentee just as much as they're going to learn from you. So go into those mentoring meetings. If there are people who are mentors on the call today, go into those mentoring meetings thinking about what you can learn from your mentee and how they can help you as well. The third thing, again, just the same for the mentor as the mentee, you're going to understand what's going on in different parts of the business, in different parts of the industry, and different parts of different businesses as well. So that improved organizational understanding and improved industry understanding too is really valuable. It's also improved leadership skills. We see some people going into mentoring as the sort of first step in their leadership development. So they want to become a people leader, they want to become a people manager. Mentoring is a really good first step there. And for those of you on the call today who are in HR departments in learning and development, if you have, and I know some organizations have the case where everyone wants to, or a lot of people want to become people managers, and there are only a certain number of available people manager roles in a business, think about how actually you can get mentoring going in the organization as a way of actually helping those people who want to become people leaders, but you don't have the roles available, to give them a bit more responsibility up front. So improving leadership skills is really a really valuable one. And then the final one, this is a bit of a cliche, but I always talk about this. It really can make a difference to someone's career. It's incredibly rewarding seeing someone develop and grow as a result of your guidance and your advice. And we're often hearing from mentees who will credit a mentor from 5, 10, even 20 years ago as being crucial and pivotal to their career success. So if you can spare 1 to 2 hours a month mentoring someone to make a difference, then why wouldn't you? It's a fantastic and very rewarding thing to do. Now, I know today is all about organizational development and mentoring within organizations as well. So the final benefits I'm going to highlight are for the organization. And the first one is that it's improved learning and insights. Mentoring is a great way to get your employees learning, get them understanding different insights about what's working well and what's not worked well in the past from various mentors, sharing those insights and those experiences. It's that in-person, very personalized learning where the mentee and the mentor are working towards the mentee's goals and objectives. So that's first and foremost a great way of helping upskill and develop your employees. The second thing is we see improved engagement rates. We know that when people have a mentor, they feel a lot more sort of nurtured, they feel a lot more supported, they then feel a lot more engaged with the business. We also know that for those people who are given the responsibility of being a mentor, we see higher engagement rates with them as well. So they see themselves given that responsibility and that ownership too. The third thing, and I'm going to come on to some stats about these later on, so it's not just a case of me putting some bullet points here and talking around them, don't worry. The third one, I can back these up. The third one is improved retention rates. We know from surveys that we've done firsthand, and also looking at stats from people staying in businesses and organisations, those people who have a mentor and who are mentors are more likely to stay with an organisation for longer. So we see improved retention rates, and in fact we ran a survey last year about things that you would consider staying with an organisation for and or leaving, and mentoring ranked really high there. So I'll talk about that in a stat in a moment. The fourth one, improved inclusion and education, and we'll talk a bit more about inclusion and equality and diversity in a moment. But actually having those first-hand conversations, talking to someone about their personal experiences, the challenges they may be facing, mentoring is a great way to actually improve inclusion and educating people on what's going on. And then the last one, improved job and career satisfaction. We know that people, when they feel like they're developing, like they're progressing, they have more satisfaction, very closely linked to that second point around engagement. We know that people feel happier when they are supported. So there we go. There are some of the benefits to the mentee, the mentor, and the organisation. Jill, are there any others that have been added into the chat, or does anyone else have any that they think might be benefits? As I say, mine is by no means an exhaustive list.
Not that I can see at the moment, Ed.
Perfect. Well, I've probably covered the main ones. So
you think you have it? Very comprehensive.
Brilliant. So I talked about obviously mentoring benefits, but actually here is the reality. Here's why it works. The first one, engagement. Of those with a mentor that we surveyed last year, an impressive 97% said that they were valuable and providing engagement. We know that they are helping people as they're going through their career development. The second one, inclusion. So 82%, we surveyed about 500 professionals last year, 82% of them said that mentoring is extremely valuable when tackling diversity and inclusion challenges. We know that that's how individuals feel about inclusion. We'll talk about the why a bit later on. The third one, retention. Retention rates are consistently higher for both mentors and mentees than those not involved in mentoring. And we've looked at the organisations we work with where they're sharing their retention stats, and they are consistently higher. We're seeing anywhere from sort of 5 to 25% higher retention rates as a result of that. So that's a significant factor when you look at how much it costs to retain talent, or how much it costs to replace any lost talent. So we know how valuable retention is. And then progression. 67% of businesses reported an increase in productivity due to mentoring. We know that it's helping people to develop. And then three stats I want to dive into just a slightly more. One of them is that employee retention. 84% of people that we surveyed last year said that access to mentoring was a factor when staying with or leaving a company. They said that if they had access to that, that there would be a factor in helping them to stay. And half that number, so 42% of people we surveyed said that it was a significant factor. So 42% of people in this survey would look at whether they're going to stay or leave a business based on whether they have access to mentoring. And that's a significant factor, they said. It wasn't just a factor, a significant one. So we know a lot of people look at mentoring and they look at whether they've got access to that as to whether they stay with a business. And we see that more and more with younger generations as well. So employee perks and employee well-being, mentoring is ranked always in the sort of top 5 list of things that the younger generation are looking for when it comes to employee perks. The second one is that satisfaction. So 86% of mentoring participants through Pushfar said they felt that mentoring is helping them to achieve their goals and develop in their career. So a huge number of people. Less than 15% said it wasn't helping them. So we know that for the individuals actually involved in mentoring, it really does help their career goals and their development. And then the final stat, which I briefly mentioned earlier, is 82% of professionals believe that mentoring is extremely valuable in tackling diversity and inclusion challenges. It is what's on the ground, really helping to translate any strategies that you have in place around inclusion, whether that's looking at sort of a gender balance, whether it's looking at balance in ethnicity or in sexual orientation, or any other stats that an organization or targets that an organization is setting. Actually, what can you actually do on the ground with your existing workforce to ensure that it's an inclusive one? Well, mentoring is one of the best ways of doing that. You're going to be ensuring that individuals are being educated and are learning as a result. And it's on that I want to talk a bit more about this now. So how and why does mentoring work when it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusion? Well, I think first and foremost, it is just about having those conversations. It's about giving people the opportunity to talk about their first-hand experiences. And it's about sharing those different perspectives with others. And when we look at larger organizations in particular, because with larger organizations, you've got more targets that have to be met, but also you've got a larger workforce in the first place. We know that there are often employee resource groups or diversity and inclusion networks. So, and these vary in terms of name, but you have sort of the LGBT plus networks, you've got the BAME or ethnic minorities networks, you've got the women's networks, you've got disability networks. These are basically about having conversations and about helping support and guide people. And at the root of that is mentoring. What we are seeing though is with those networks, with those employee resource groups, there can be a tendency for them to almost form their own bubble of support, which is great in some respects, and it's fantastic that there is that support. But actually, it's not helping with inclusion. It's almost segmenting things more and making things worse. Getting mentoring happening between the employee resource groups and the wider employee network is really vital. And how do you go about that? It's a challenge. There are a few things you can do. The first one is identify key individuals who are really advocating inclusion within an organization. Identify those senior leaders who are keen to get involved as well. And a lot of the time they will have targets that they're working towards. So getting their support shouldn't be difficult. And then getting the support of those networks in the first place is really, really valuable. So talking to those people who run those employee resource groups, getting them interested in and engaged with mentoring on a wider scale is vital. The second thing is explore the needs for individuals. If you know that in your organization there are challenges that you are facing around people not feeling included, if you're looking at exit surveys from employees and you're finding that actually it's not an inclusive business, that people don't feel valued and people don't feel that their individual needs are being met, then actually explore what those look like, explore where mentoring needs to then take place, whether it's that senior leaders just don't understand what the challenges are that certain other individuals face, or whether it's just actually trying to level the playing field for everyone. What are those needs? Exploring those needs and then try and apply them to mentoring. The third thing, and we'll talk a bit more about this in the next few slides, is consider reverse mentoring. So if you're finding there are individuals who aren't feeling heard, who aren't feeling that that they are really being made equal within an organization, consider how you can engage with those individuals to actually mentor senior leaders, to talk to senior leaders about the challenges that they're facing, that the senior leaders may just be blissfully unaware are even happening on the ground. So actually, you know, a lot of the time the problem with or the problems that we're seeing around mentoring with diversity, equality and inclusion are just a lack of education. I was part of an organization myself a while ago where they were sending employees to work or contracts in the Middle East. And actually, the senior leaders hadn't even considered the fact that there are anti-gay and anti-LGBT laws in the Middle East, that where some of those individuals that were being sort of posted out there for contracts just didn't feel safe doing that. They didn't really feel that they could bring that up in conversation though, because there just wasn't the forum to do that. And actually, if you're getting reverse mentoring going and you're getting individuals feeling comfortable talking about challenges they may be facing, that's essentially what the main what the main source to success is for that. So educating senior leaders. Making your program an opt-in program is really important when we're looking at mentoring for diversity and inclusion. And what we mean by this is not limiting mentoring to, as I said earlier, that top 5% or that bottom 5% of the business, or those who have been tagged as high potentials. You can absolutely have a high potential, and I sort of hasten to use that word, but it's one that a lot of people know. You can absolutely have a high potential mentoring program. But actually, ultimately, you should make sure that you've got mentoring open to everyone, that people can opt in, that they're not being forced into it, but also they're not being locked out of it. So make it opt-in. Say that it's open to everyone, make it really clear that everyone can get involved. And that will immediately start to level that playing field and make sure you're creating a more inclusive culture. And then the final thing I would say when you're looking at mentoring, particularly around diversity, equality, and inclusion, but actually this goes for mentoring overall, focus on quality over quantity. If you can get 5 mentors and 5 mentees into mentoring relationships that are really having quality conversations, particularly if you're looking at it from a reverse mentoring perspective or a diversity and equality and inclusion perspective, then you're doing fantastically well. You're affecting 10 individuals, essentially, the mentors and the mentees. And point number 5 is more, I suppose, focused on smaller organizations where I know sometimes people are worried that actually there isn't a diverse enough workforce, and actually focus on quality over quantity. So those are 5 things to think about when setting up and supporting diversity, equality, and inclusion through mentoring. I now briefly want to talk about mentoring for people development strategies. And there are a few ways in which you can apply this. Some of these more obvious than others, but the first one is new joiners. We know that in the first 90 days for people joining an organization are crucial. We know that if they are having a great start to the business or the organization they're working with, they're more likely to join, they're more likely to stay for longer, they're more likely to feel engaged. Getting mentors and mentees into mentoring relationships when they're joining a business is really valuable, because those new joiners will feel they've not only got the support of their manager, but they then also have the support of their mentor. And for some new joiners, there's a tendency to feel less confident about the work that you're doing in terms of talking to your manager and saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. Sometimes new joiners will stay silent and they'll try and work out and learn about what they're doing just by kind of mirroring or following what others are doing. But actually, if you put a mentor in place for a new joiner as well, they've immediately got a second support network where they're not worried about asking for advice and guidance. And actually, ideally, they would be comfortable going to their manager. But if you give them a mentor as well, you're immediately helping. So looking at new joiners programs. These are sometimes referred to as sort of buddying programs. There's a lot of overlap between buddying and mentoring as well. Succession planning is another thing that we're seeing a lot of mentoring coming into. So looking at the next 5 to 10 years for the business, looking at who your current senior leaders are, who potentially could be those replacement senior leaders. There are some organizations that are potentially quite worried that they are going to lose a generation of people who are coming up to retirement age. Actually looking at succession, looking at starting to get those people mentored who can step into those roles in the next 5 or 10 years, again, really valuable. So look at those succession plans and look at how you can tie mentoring into that. The third one, I talked about this a bit, but high potentials. So who are those people that you can think could really thrive in the business, who maybe are doing a job that they're really good at, but as a result, they sort of aren't getting the joy or the satisfaction out of it they might be. Think about how you can get them into mentoring as well, either as mentees or mentors or both. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is that around the fact that if you are looking at nurturing high potential talent, you don't have any sort of people management roles available in the business, though, think about actually how you can put them into the role of a mentor for 2 or even 3 people to help give them some leadership development skills. The fourth one is career pathways. Some organizations will have career pathways, others won't. If you are in an organization where you do have career pathways, look at actually how, again, mentoring can be the stepping stone to all of those pathways. The fifth one, cross-departmental. Try and get people to talk outside their bubbles, talking outside their departments, outside their job functions. This goes back to that benefit about understanding what's going on within the business. You know, where are things happening within an organization or a business, and does everyone in the organization know what's going on in different departments? And you may find that two different departments are talking to the same client about two different things, and if they teamed up, they'd be far more productive or effective with that client. And actually, mentoring is a really good way of breaking down those barriers and providing additional channels of communication. And then the final thing, as I've talked about a bit, is that mentor empowerment. Having the opportunity to be a mentor should feel like a great privilege. It should feel like a great opportunity. There are lots of benefits to it. Just highlight those to your people and make it really clear to them what that empowerment looks like. I'm now moving on to reverse mentoring in a bit more detail. I know I've been mentioning this throughout, and it's a really, really effective way of getting individuals engaged with mentoring. So I'm just going to put that definition up on the slide again. It's when one individual, typically considered less experienced, more junior or younger, shares knowledge, experience, and skills in a specific area. So when we look at this, we can talk about how reverse mentoring can be applied to trends and technology. We know that the world's technology is moving faster than ever, and it has been moving faster than ever for the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years. We've got things like NFTs and blockchain technology, which I have no idea about, but the younger generation seem to. And actually, it is becoming more and more part of businesses. So actually getting those people who've just left school or college or university, educating senior leaders on trends in technology, on things like how you can leverage TikTok for brand awareness in businesses, all of those things that the younger generation are probably going to be quite switched on about. Get them sharing those insights, get them sharing that knowledge that they have with senior leaders. It's going to make them feel a lot more empowered. It's going to make them feel a lot more valued, and it's going to give them the opportunity to talk to senior leaders in a way they wouldn't otherwise be able to. The other application, of course, of reverse mentoring, as I mentioned, is looking at it from the perspective of diversity and inclusion. So getting those individuals who are in inclusion groups to educate senior leaders on the challenges they're facing. Again, really valuable, really vital, and a brilliant and worthwhile opportunity for everyone to learn. So benefits of reverse mentoring now. I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly because some of these are quite similarly aligned, but the first one is encouraging learning at all levels. It's accepting and coming to the understanding that actually even the most senior person in a business who may be close to retirement has still got things that they can learn. They can still learn from others. They can still learn from different perspectives. They can work out how to then be better themselves, but also how they can improve the business if they are in a leadership position. And you're encouraging that right the way through. It's empowerment, as I said, for those younger employees. It's giving them that amazing opportunity that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise have. It's awareness of different perspectives. What are those challenges that are being faced? How do people feel about when they're joining the business? Actually, what are the things that can be improved for people moving into the organization? Getting that awareness of different perspectives. And also for those people who've just joined the business and those younger employees, actually having them understand the perspectives of senior leaders and actually what they're going through and what they're doing. So it's awareness of all different perspectives at all levels. It's education in challenges facing individuals, as I talked about, very closely linked with diversity and inclusion. You know, what is it that actually people are struggling with and why, and how can organizations improve that for them? And then finally, it's a great way of improving cross-departmental channels of communication, breaking down those barriers, getting people talking, making sure that people aren't siloed into departments or job functions in a business. Really, really valuable. And then finally, it's actually great for combating imposter syndrome. I know, and I've spoken to a couple of senior leaders not too long ago who said they were terrified of making mistakes. They felt they didn't know where, they didn't know what was going on across the organization. They sort of felt like they were imposters in those roles, and they didn't know everything they needed to know. And I think that's common for a lot of people. I think a lot of people, particularly if they've been recently promoted into new roles, have that imposter syndrome, and getting people mentoring, talking about that is a great way of combating that. So those are just some of the benefits. Penultimate slide that I want to go on to now is things to consider when reverse mentoring. So if you're thinking about rolling out reverse mentoring to your organization, a few things to just consider first and foremost. The first one is training for junior employees on mentoring. So if you are getting junior or recently joined employees to start mentoring senior employees, the chances are they probably won't have had any mentoring training. So getting them into a training workshop, we run lots of mentoring training workshops at Pushfar, getting them into that training about what mentoring is, how to be an effective mentor, really important step. And it's sometimes overlooked, so it's just worth highlighting that. The second one is you might also, in line with training, want to explore training on building confidence. If you are looking at reverse mentoring, the chances are that those people who are those reverse mentors may well not have the level of confidence to have a really open, honest, and ultimately beneficial conversation with the senior leader. They may feel actually slightly terrified about the idea of doing that. I can just imagine myself, when I joined my first company, the idea of mentoring the CEO of the business would have filled me with horror. So actually, you might want to look at training around confidence building as part of that. The third thing, of course, it's important to engage with senior leadership. Try and encourage them to embrace mentoring, talk to them about the benefits of being mentored. Sometimes senior leaders will think, oh, I'm not going to do that. I know everything and I don't need to be mentored by someone who's just joined the business. Actually, having those conversations, getting that engagement is really important. It'll also have a trickle-down effect. If everyone in the business or the organization can see that the senior leaders, the CEO, the C-suite team are mentors and being mentored, it will encourage others to get into mentoring relationships as well. People will have the mindset of, oh, well, the CEO has a mentor, so I better have one as well. Or the CEO is being mentored, so I definitely need to as well. I've also heard about cultures where organizational cultures where people think of mentoring as a negative. They think, oh, they've got a mentor because they need support. Trying to break down that assumption, which is absolutely wrong but does exist, is important. And getting senior leadership engaging with mentoring is one way you can do that. And then this all comes into building an overarching mentoring culture. So I wouldn't recommend starting with reverse mentoring if you're not already doing the more traditional mentoring. Build mentoring and reverse mentoring into a mentoring culture. So that mentoring culture goes into that previous point, making sure senior leaders are in mentoring relationships, making sure that mentoring is visible, making sure that you're giving your employees the time to get into those mentoring conversations. Doesn't need to be a long time commitment. 1 to 2 hours a month is optimal for mentoring meetings, but making sure you're allowing your employees the time to do that, building in that culture where everyone has a mentor and everyone is a mentor, and mentoring's happening all over the business is really, really important to consider. So how you build out that mentoring culture, how you build out the communication about mentoring as well. I'm going to wrap things up now. And we'll have plenty of time for questions too, and thoughts. I'm really keen to hear thoughts as well. A few things that you can do to get involved straight away though. Join the Institute mentoring program. If you remember, you've got the access to that Chartered Institute of Housing's mentoring program and platform. Get involved, join it. If you're already a mentee, consider how you can share your knowledge with others and mentor others, and vice versa. Review the mentoring guides and resources that are on the platform. So we do have guidelines. You can just type into Google Pushfar mentoring guidelines and you'll find those. Feel free to distribute them out to your employees as well. Review those resources and guides. Look at how you can start mentoring programs. Make sure you're proactively engaging in mentoring. And hopefully this one is obvious, but if you've said, I want to be a mentor or I want to be mentored, make sure you're making the time for it. Make sure you're having those mentoring meetings. Make sure you're setting and working towards those goals. And finally, real cliche, just to wrap things up, spread the word about the power of mentoring. If you're finding it's helpful, if you're finding you're getting benefit out of it, talk to others about it, talk to colleagues. Obviously, be mindful about mentoring confidentiality. But actually, if both you and your mentor or mentee are happy to talk about it a bit, share it on LinkedIn, share a screenshot of the two of you on a video call having a mentoring meeting. You don't need to talk about the confidentiality of within the mentoring meeting, but talk about the fact that you've got a mentor or that you are a mentor, as long as both parties in that mentoring relationship are happy to do so. Get more people involved in mentoring. We know it can help in so many ways and on so many levels. And that's that. I'm going to wrap up now. I'm going to hand back over to Jill and would love to hear thoughts and questions.
Brilliant, Ed. I mean, just thank you for that. It was absolutely amazing and covered so many areas. I've made loads of observations and sort of my own observations and sort of questions as we've been going along, and we've had loads of engagement on the chat. I'm just going to pick up on one of the points sort of that Paulette had asked as a newbie, any advice on sort of how to get a mentor. So you then touched upon CIH and our mentoring program. So I was in sort of the midst of sort of picking that up with Paulette. So hopefully, Paulette, if that has helped in terms of sort of whether it's looking at a mentor through the CIH program or whether it's external, if you need us to provide any sort of more clarity and sort of information on that, then please do let me know through the chat. So my eyes are scanning sort of on the screen on my papers and everything else. So I'm about to just, Ed, I'm going to take the opportunity to pose some observations to you. And again, if we can just sort of ask, please do use the chat. I'll keep going back to that to make sure we pick up on everybody's questions. The first sort of observation that I wanted to sort of pick up on, and I was really pleased to see that you reiterated it time and time again. When you talked about the point that you made about particularly in smaller organisations where there might be a very limited opportunity to go into the next level, or to go into management posts, and that opportunity that mentoring and becoming a mentor can actually provide through that. That was a really sort of excellent observation, and then how you then linked it into EDI and about nurturing within an organisation. So I was really keen to see that you had touched upon sort of where there is that limited scope in terms of opportunity perhaps within an organisation. So thank you for that. When you were talking about benefits, in terms of the benefits of mentoring as being a mentor, Mick actually mentioned a comment that on a personal level, being able to provide mentoring to an individual has helped to sort of fulfil that need of helping another person, and in which case sort of supporting mental well-being, well-being and health. So I think that's a really, really valid point. So thank you for that, Mick. So I'm going to pick up on a couple of questions, and then I'm just going to go sort of backwards and forwards. The first thing that I wanted to sort of just pick up on was when you talked on a number of occasions about getting senior leadership buy-in. Do you have any tips on how to sort of deal with some of the challenges that might present?
Great question. I think it sort of depends what those challenges might be. I think the first thing when we talk about senior leadership and hesitancies that they might have around getting involved in mentoring, it's probably because they have a lack of understanding of what mentoring really is on a basic level. So I would say educating senior leaders on what mentoring is and what those benefits are. You don't want to come across as patronizing by telling them that, but actually there are ways that you can do that by tying it into presenting, okay, we're launching this program and these are all the benefits to all of our employees, and it'd be great for you to get involved as well, because the more you can be seen as being involved in mentoring, the more it will encourage others and therefore encourage the success of the business. And then things like retention rates are going to improve, engagement rates are going to improve, things like that. So actually, if you could just convey those responses to senior leaders, I suppose that's probably half the battle, if not most of it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Let's have a look. So if I can just pick up as well, then sort of if an organisation does have a mentoring program, a mentoring scheme internally, and they don't have enough mentors, any sort of guidance in terms of how to get more involved?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think if you're a smaller organisation, maybe look at how you can team up with other organisations. We run a number of sort of cross-company mentoring programs. Obviously, we run a fantastic one for the Chartered Institute of Housing. So, you know, encourage employees to get involved in that. But then if you already have a close working relationship with another organisation that's maybe complementary, I know a lot of organisations look at sort of partnership models now. Think about how you can get mentors from there and vice versa to do that sort of cross-company mentoring. If you're worried about not having enough mentors internally, think about actually if those people are happy to be mentors for maybe 2 people, you know, actually you then only need half the number. It sounds obvious, but one that's sort of often overlooked is you could easily be a mentor to 2 people. So if you have, you know, 20 mentors, but you have 40 mentees, actually getting each of them mentoring 2 people would be a quick win. And, you know, a couple of them might be happy to mentor 3 people, so that offsets it. So kind of looking at that, I suppose, is the other thing. Brilliant,
thank you very much. So yes, there's a few questions in the chat which are more CIH specific, so I can pick up on those as part of some of the responses. Oh, that's not. Can you see me?
We can. I think it says. I think someone else has shared their screen, possibly accidentally.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. We're back. Not quite sure what happened. There you are. Okay, so one of the questions sort of that's just come in is what are your top tips on setting up a mentoring program?
Really good one. So the first thing is looking at recruiting mentors and mentees. This sounds obvious, but making sure you've got them engaged with mentoring in the first place, that you do have enough mentors and mentees, that you are talking to them about why they might want to get involved in the first place. So you've got some rough idea of how many mentors you have available, to then how many mentees you might have looking for interest. Second thing then is looking at like, how are you matching people? Are you giving them the control to match themselves? In which case things like Pushfar's platform, ideal for doing that. So yeah, we can help with that. But otherwise, an Excel spreadsheet and looking at some certain criteria around job levels, if you're looking at it like that, or looking at kind of needs-based mentor matching. Just thinking about, you know, how are you going to do the matching? Is it a case of looking at it being needs-based? Are you giving the individuals a control, or as the program manager, are you going to facilitate the matches for them? Giving them some training. Doesn't have to be a lot of training, but an hour on what is a mentor and a mentee, what their roles are on both sides, common pitfalls and how to avoid them, things like that. That's really important to do as well. And then once you've given them that initial training, sort of letting them get on with it, and then having a check-in with them after sort of 3 or 4 months, and then again after another sort of 6 months, and sending out a couple of surveys as well is also a really good thing to do. So just seeing how it's going, making sure that all the mentors and mentees have a point of contact, where if they do have any questions, if they're unsure about anything, they know that they've got that support there as well. But I mean, at Pushfar, we've got resources on how you can set up a mentoring program as well. So I'm very happy to send that through as well.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you for that, Ed. And just linked in with that was a question from Vicky. And I just wanted to make you aware, one of the things that Vicky said is that you've really helped in terms of helping to make a business case for it. So thank you very much. And we're getting some really positive comments coming through on the chat. Shola has kindly shared some information about being able to access the mentoring platform as part of your CIH membership. So we will try to pick up on as many of those queries as we can through this chat at the moment, but I'm just going to scan through some really positive questions and comments. Thank you, in terms of sort of how useful it's been. Vicky, I can pick up with you in terms of your questions about organisational rather than individual membership, so I can talk to you about that. And we've got some observations about sort of, which I think is probably linked to being able to find suitable mentors on the platform. So Shola, we can sort of pick up on any of those areas. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that's sort of specific to organisation. Carolyn made an observation earlier in terms of perhaps it being a good idea for mentoring to become a must-do for housing associations, and that she had had an external mentor, but it was only as a result of a request through part of an appraisal and development as a manager. That's a really helpful comment, because one of the things that I put into the chat as well earlier, Carolyn, I don't know if you noticed, was whether if an organisation does have a mentoring programme internally, do they actively promote it as an employee benefit? And I would suspect that there's probably many cases where that doesn't happen. Carolyn, do you want to come on? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to unmute yourself, if you did want to explore it in more detail, then please feel free. Yeah, she's unmuted.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I discovered mentoring, and it wasn't very fashionable or talked about, at all, about 5 or 6 years ago even, and especially in the housing association movement. But I really benefited from having a knowledgeable external person who could help me solve some of the problems, help guide me towards being a better manager. And I've never forgotten that. And the other one I wanted to, and it wasn't, there's no policy in the organisation. There was someone, I think it was Jill Red, mentioned it about, it's not really widely understood, and CEOs, directors, maybe even boards, maybe don't realise the importance of it. And I think we just need to keep shouting about it and keep telling the world that this is actually a good thing. It does so much for an organisation. I know it helped me. I know it helped the organisation that I worked for. And the other thing that was mentioned was, reverse mentoring. I was responsible for the marketing of the organisation I worked for about 10 years, until we recruited a marketing assistant. And what she had for, I didn't know anything as far as, that's what I learned from her. She knew so much about it, and it was so easy. So it was a kind of sort of two-way mentoring that went on. So I think what I find hard, sorry to hijack it, but I think what I found particularly hard as a senior manager was that some middle management, colleagues felt that mentoring, because we didn't have a fund or a policy for it or anything like that, I think they found it a bit intrusive. They thought that to understand in the first place, they weren't particularly doing their job well. That's why they had to be mentored, and that's still something that I find happening. So there you go, but thank you.
No, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for being brave enough to come on screen and talk. Thank you. Ed, would you like to pick up on anything further from that? That was really helpful, and I think that one, certainly when you talked about reverse mentoring and that whole idea of seeing how it trickles through the organisation, I mean, what a powerful way to be able to sort of really promote the value of mentoring an organisation. If you see then that your CEO is being mentored by a more junior member of staff, or a senior member of staff by a more junior member of staff, and all those sort of things that they're able to pick up on. Absolutely gold. Yeah,
completely. Yeah, and it all goes back to that, building that mentoring culture in the organisation in the first place, making sure there's visibility of it, making sure you're giving employees the time to do so. As you say, absolute gold, and building a mentoring culture is something that's sometimes overlooked, but is important to do when you are starting mentoring in an organisation.
Brilliant. Excellent, thank you very much. I'm mindful of time, and sort of appreciate everyone is so busy, but we've had so much engagement, and thank you so much to all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to attend today and participate. Hopefully, and from what I've seen, you found it all so useful, and thank you very much for all of your feedback and your support. And Ed, if I can just thank you again for your time today and your ongoing support with our mentoring mentoring provision. So thank you very much. Without further ado, hope to see you at a future event. And Ed, the comments are continuing to come in. So thank you very much. Great session. And I'll leave you all on with your lunch. Thanks all. Remember, this is going on the website as well, again, just to remind you. So you'll be able to go back on it. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.